When you go into digital, we need to give the customer a choice. Previously, what happened was if you wanted to go digital, you only had your bank's internet or mobile banking. Whether you like it or not, you had to use it. So what we did was we connected all the payment portals into a unified system where a customer could pick any digital payment mode in the market and attach his bank account and make a payment.
So a lot of corporates may have to pay taxes to clear the goods. So we facilitate that to be done digitally. We are looking at how more and more these such organizations can be incorporated to our platform, which is called Lanka Pay online payment platform. People know how digitally you sign the document and what kind of infrastructure you need. So we had to create that awareness first.
Hello, you're with an Echelon series featuring companies driving change through innovation. Now, Lanka Pay was started as an organization to help clear checks issued between banks. It is a service that they continue to offer. But if you log on to their website now, you'll notice that they offer at least 15 other products in addition to check clearing. It looks like over the last decade or more, the company has gone through a massive transformation, becoming a major player, in fact, becoming the backbone of Sri Lanka's digital payments architecture. Today in the studio with us, we have Channa Silva, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Lanka Pay, and Dinuka Perera, who is the Deputy Chief Executive Officer of Lanka Pay, to discuss this major transformation both at Lanka Pay and also in Sri Lanka's digital payments architecture. Gentlemen, welcome to Echelon. So, Channa, let me start with you. Now, as we sort of discussed here, or as I mentioned in the introduction, Lanka Pay today is an organization with 16 different products cutting across all the key stakeholders in the online payments ecosystem, right? When you joined the company, so let's go back a decade, or so. What was the landscape like? And can you talk to us about the transformation in the economy and how the payment system has responded to that transformation?
Yes, when I joined somewhere around end of 2015, which is about 8+ years ago, we were just doing a few things of like check clearance, what we started. And also in terms of common ATM switch was there. That was also cash, and also slips, which is more of bulk payments. SEFT had just started to roll out. But I think what actually happened was what we realized is what the market needs, and also how do we move people into a more convenience mode of transactions. We had to look at different options and different use cases. So in that sense, what we have done over the last, say, 8 years or so, we have looked at different scenarios or use cases in the market to see what are the gaps, what are the spots where it's not convenient for somebody to do a transaction. And we have studied that, and we have come up with solutions to address some of those gaps. And by addressing some of those gaps, we have made the payment ecosystem seamless and convenient. So people would be premises, if you want to take somebody out of using cash into digital, the mode of transaction has to be simpler than using cash. Right. If it's not simpler, they will not switch. So it's a behavioral change.
Sure.
For that behavioral change, we had to come through innovation to address those gaps and make it more convenient and make it more user-friendly or seamless. Then people will move. So most of these innovations, most of these products or solutions that have come out are addressing different gaps in the market to make the entire ecosystem converged into a single ecosystem, and also make sure that people's lives are more convenient than before, so that people will move and we will create that behavioral change.
So you have to link all these key participants in the ecosystem, right? And you have to make it convenient for everybody, that this is more convenient than cash. So we normally think of, individual users. Is it more convenient for me than to pay by cash? But it's not so simple in a corporate environment, right? What was particularly challenging about that? So
absolutely, one of the biggest things in the corporate world was ease of doing business, right? And especially the exporters and importers. In that sense, they had a couple of issues. One issue was actually doing a transaction, and primarily the large transactions like customs payments and tax payments. They were done mostly through cash or pay orders. and you had to physically go to a bank and get a pay order and so on. And also you couldn't do it after 3 p.m. on a weekday. Weekends you couldn't do because banks were closed. So we had to come up with a solution where people could do it from wherever, whether it's from home or office or wherever, at whatever time, even on a Sunday night. And that's where we had to come and introduce a system where it was seamless and people could make those transactions much faster and simpler and securely, and they could do it, because the whole idea was entire customs was open 24/7, 365 days, but the payments could be only made until 3 p.m. on a weekday, and people couldn't get the goods cleared. And if we are to make this seamless as well as increase the sort of ease of doing business, then we had to come up with different solutions. So, for example, even tax payments to other payments, the same. But also in terms of, we saw a lot of people were writing checks in the ecosystem. And given the scenario of COVID, you couldn't write checks and send it. So fortunately, we had the rails going. And then people, the corporates found it easier to do. I mean, pretty much everybody shifted to work from home and they were able to carry out business. So I think that's where the innovation and technology came in to help the entire ecosystem.
Dinuka, let me bring you in. It's convenience, but also in a corporate environment, you have to establish the processes. If a company doesn't put processes to support the changes that you're driving, so it has to be a cultural change in a way, right?
Correct. Just to add to what Channa was saying, the word convenience comes over and over again comes up when we talk about our transformative journey. So what you need to understand in every product that we have come up with, we think about how convenient we can make it. Now, our vision itself says that in everything we do, we believe in the value of your time. So that's the premise. Whenever we conceptualize something, we look at how we can bring the convenience to our citizens, the corporates. Coming back to your question, the corporates have to look at how they move from check writing process or cash, paying by cash, into a more online process. So there are process changes that needs to happen within the corporates. But looking at ourselves as an organization, as you know, we started as a check clearing organization. Sure. So it was a journey for us also to train our staff to see how we can come up with products which now caters across the board in a more digital sense. So we have our staff strength is little over 100, but we haven't significantly grown. We still work with the same amount of people, but internally also we have changed our processes quite significantly to take on this journey, move from more of a check clearing operation to an operation where now we cater more digitally.
Sure.
And you talked about the process, especially if you take, say, government payments. Payments is only one segment of the whole ecosystem. Before a payment, there's an invoice, there's a purchase order, there are a lot of documentation, right? And if you just make the payment digital and everything else is manual, there's no ease of doing business. Sure. So that's where we automated the entire chain through digital signatures, where you digitize all the documents and also submit. And then also payment is digital, then actually gives the full 360-degree view of whole ecosystem digitally. Otherwise, you just do one or two piecemeal, it doesn't, create that. But also what we realize is no point just bringing in one or two pieces together. Unless the cycle is complete, there'll be some break point, people will shift to manual. So we have to make that entire experience digital. If you leave one or two manual pieces, that the experience won't be seamless, as what it should be.
Yeah. And when I'm looking at the suite of products that LankaPay is offering, I don't know whether there is one dominant one, but JustPay is a well-known brand. It's one that I think more ordinary people are also somewhat familiar with, right? Can you briefly tell us what JustPay is, just in case, and also tell us in this ecosystem, particularly in relation to the corporate environment, how does JustPay now, with its newer innovations, relate to this environment?
The whole concept of JustPay was to bring low-value transactions into digital. Primarily, 100% of those happened in cash previously. So our objective was to even the mobile reloads to very small value, 100 rupee, 200 rupee transactions. How do we bring them into digital? So the way we identified was mobile phone smartphone is basically prevalent. We did a recent research. We found that nearly 67 to 68% smartphone penetration is there compared to population in the country. So which is a decent number to go after. So in that sense, what we did was actually one of the things about JustPay is we realized that when you go into digital, we need to give the customer a choice. Previously, what happened was if you wanted to go digital, you only had your bank's internet or mobile banking. Whether you like it or not, you had to use it, right? But here, what happens is if you don't give them a choice, they will just switch to cash or not move away. So what we did was we connected all the apps, connected all the browser-based interfaces or payment portals into a unified system where a customer could pick any app in the market, any payment mode, digital payment mode in the market, and attach his bank account and make a payment. So what we found is we have more bank accounts in the country than the population open, right?
Sure.
So we are a well-banked country. So in that sense, what it means is pretty much everybody has a bank account. So we created the option for consumers to use whatever app they prefer, which was the freedom that we gave them. So they could go and select something based on their requirement without sticking to one or two. So that actually created that freedom for consumers.
Now you also have JustPay web on working on your browser, on your computer, right? Absolutely. And versus the JustPay we are mostly familiar with, which works on a smartphone.
That's correct.
I suppose this is more attractive in a company environment, in a corporate environment.
So what we found was most of the e-commerce sites that are out there were browser-based. They were not an app. At least the most popular ones out there, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, actually why we had to stick to mobile was previously the way we implemented, certain mechanisms could only be implemented through a smartphone. Then we figure out, then we are keeping the e-commerce and the corporate portals and the websites which want to accept payments out of this whole ecosystem because they are not an app. So we wanted to bring them in. So we figured out a mechanism, that's what we call JustPay Web, where a customer now could add his bank account to a website rather than just through an app, right? Do it securely, the same mechanism what they're doing through an app. So once we do that, it's actually opened up the entire e-commerce channel, which is open, for a payment and making a payment through a bank account, which is what the difference. So now there's a huge opportunity for all the banks. Now, for example, it's very simple. You may have a bank account in one bank and you are using internet banking, but you may have money in another bank. Now, so we have enabled to link that account to that internet banking, and you can actually easily do a fund transfer without switching apps, without switching it to, having to use multiple apps. So that actually has brought in the convenience to the consumer as well as for businesses. It has created opportunities.
Right. For somebody watching who may not be familiar with the nuances among the individual products that you also have a product called PayMe, right? Can you contrast the two? JustPay versus PayMe, and what was that opportunity that you saw with PayMe that JustPay couldn't fill?
So PayMe is to address actually unique gap in the market, right? So one of the things that we found, PayMe is actually what we call a secure messaging platform, right? We want to order things online through an e-commerce site. We order something that to be delivered, right? And then what happened was what we found through market research is that we found nearly 65 to 68% of the people order cash on delivery, because they are not sure whether they will deliver the goods, whether they will come with the same quality, or whether they'll get the goods at all after the payment, right? So they were not sure. And they were going with the cash on delivery, where they see the goods, they give the cash to the delivery guy. But the problem with that is the delivery channel never tells when they are coming home, right? So you are in office and then you suddenly get a call, say, I'm in front of your gate to deliver the goods. You have not left the cash at home and there's no way to make a payment, right? So huge gap in that market. So what we felt is, can we do JustPay on delivery, right? How do you do that? The guy who comes to deliver, just send you a link, which will come as an in-app message wherever you are, right? And then you just click on it and make that payment, and the payment will go. So it's immaterial whether you're at home, but you are still making sure that you pay on delivery, but you are sure that the goods have been delivered, and maybe somebody from at home can inspect it whether the goods have come properly. But you are giving that option to the consumer for JustPay on delivery.
what are the other use cases of this PayMe?
In terms of making this available for utility bill payments, not only for e-commerce but utility bill payments. Now we get a reminder saying your electricity bill is due or phone bill is due. Now we can use PayMe. And if the corporates can send it to their customers, it again make it very much convenient for the customers to make the payment. And for the corporates, it's a easier way of collecting the payments because still it is not a static message that comes. When the message comes, me as a consumer can open the message and make that payment quickly. So what actually the whole difference there is, previously also you got a SMS saying your mobile bill is this much to pay, water bill, electricity bill. You did nothing. Now it will actually come as an in-app message in whatever app you have. And then say CEB is requesting you 5,000 rupees. You just click on it and just make the payment, right? And make it seamless for payment collection. So that's why we say PayMe. So this is not restricted to corporates. It can be an individual. I want to pay a plumber, electrician, odd job guy, right? So they can just request a payment from me and it'll come as an in-app payment, in-app request, and they'll just make a payment. So it actually addresses, it basically gels all the apps and consumers together to automatically send a request as well as automatically making a payment. And also what happens is, generally what happens when you get SMS, you just forget about it. You just, just look at it and forget.
There's no call to action.
Call to action, right? Here you just get it as in-app. You can just click and pay. So I think that makes it more convenient and sticky so that people will start using more and more technology.
Just to add to what Channa said, to contrast between just PayMe and JustPay, PayMe is nothing but a smart message which you can send to another person, a corporate can send to its customers, and customer has the convenience of paying it easily. But JustPay is a payment option that you can use to make payments easily. So that's a smart message is PayMe and JustPay is a payment option.
And the difference there is previously also these options were there, but you had to use the app of the same company. If you get a telco message, you have to use the app of that company. Here, it's any app that you have. So it's app independent and interoperable, right? So it gives the entire freedom to the consumer to use whatever app he or she has and pay whatever payment request. So this is ideal for any recurrent payments.
So
buy now, pay
whatever
later.
Bank app that you have and whatever service provider app that you
Fintech
have.
apps, anything. Yes, telco app, whatever app you have, it'll integrate.
Right. Let me move to this other area, right? And we were, just before this, we were discussing how important it was to have the corporates in the ecosystem. And that's more complex than having individuals, I suppose, in a way, right? One aspect of getting this done is to make sure that their interactions with the government and payments to the government are more seamless, right? LankaPay has introduced a government payment platform, right? Again, can you first explain to us how this works in that, in sort of linking a company or an individual to the government?
The main request was it was not convenient to make a payment to a government department. That was, you had to go in a queue or you had to take a physical invoice and, go to that department, go from counter to counter and so on, right? Here, the requirement was to make a payment to any government department at any time you want and any time of the day, right? Which is the requirement of the consumer as well as citizens. So in that sense, the biggest problem was some of the departments, when you're making a payment, at the time of making the payment, based on the time or the day of the payment, the amount might vary. Because, for example, customs duty keeps on changing, demurrages and, other things. So, exact time of payment, you have to make that exact payment, otherwise you won't get a refund also easily, right? So, in that sense, certain departments, we had to link directly to their system, whichever the department that had a system, and provide the consumer at the time of payment how much to pay. So for those departments, we had to connect them directly and provide that convenience to the customer using whatever app they have, whether it's internet banking, mobile banking, or fintech app. But for other departments, we found 95 to 98 of the government departments don't have systems. They don't have system. They are just working on Excel sheets or manual. So still the consumers need to make payments like rate payments to tax payments to all these different payments, right? And for those, without a system in those departments, we had to come up with a way they can make a payment conveniently and also based on an invoice that they have received from that department. That's the bridge that we have created, where we have not gone and developed systems for government. What we have done is the systems that they have, we have connected to payments. And even if they don't have a system, we have enabled a consumer or a citizen to make a payment.
Yeah. In terms of corporates, how they benefit now for Sri Lanka customs, a lot of corporates may have to pay taxes or whatever to clear the goods. So we facilitate that to be done digitally for income taxes, pay, withholding tax, VAT, all that we facilitate where we have connected the RAMIS system of Inland Revenue Department, and through the banks, the corporates, through their corporate portals, they can make the payments. Similarly with BUI, Department of Commerce. So we are looking at how more and more these such organizations can be incorporated to our platform, which is called Lanka Pay online payment platform. Even that will increase the ease of doing business index as well. So we look from a more national holistic view as to how we can come in and make that bridge between the government organizations and the payments to be received. So as a country, we increase our ease of doing business index as well. Just to take a use case, if you have to make a payment for income taxes, usually there are deadlines. Let's say 30th April, there's a deadline. Now, using the online payment option, you can make that payment until 11:59 in the night.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But if it is to be made over a counter, the branches are closed by 3 o'clock. So that convenience is there for the corporates, especially. What we are trying to do, like our vision says, we are trying to make it very much easier, convenient, not only for the general public, the individual, but for the corporates also to do these transactions.
And also we have gone one step further. Now, for example, if you take customs as an example, we have automated the payment system. But then what about the pile of documents that a trader has to submit? So what we have done is we have brought in digital signatures where a customer, it's a corporate or a trader, can just digitally sign all those documents and directly submit that to Asikuda system. And then the payment can be initiated after that or digitally. So it's automating that entire chain. Otherwise, what happens is you make the digital payment, but you have to carry a file of documents to customs and hand it over physically, which we have taken out also. So unless this is rolled out to all the other government departments, otherwise, no point automating one government department, because for a trade, multiple departments like BUI to ports to all these guys are linked. So unless you automate all these departments, there would not be any impact on the ease of doing business.
Sure.
So we have to automate that entire chain. We have started the process with customs. I think it can be rolled out.
Right. So just to understand now, people may sort of interpret what a digital signature means differently, right? But tell me about this. What about the document integrity, security, usability? We are not talking here about placing a copy of your signature and PDFing a document. We are talking about a proper system where it is digitally
so basically
recorded.
the difference is electronic signature is just scanning your actual physical signature from a document.
Sure.
And attaching it to a electronic document.
Sure.
The problem with that is you can manipulate, can put somebody else's
Sure.
signature.
Yeah.
You can change the document after putting the signature
Sure.
digitally and all that. So it's not secure, right? So here what happens is with digital signature, with the technology, it prevents somebody from altering the document. Even if somebody alters the document, the receiver would know that the document has been changed after somebody has put the signature. And also the signature is bound to the person who actually puts the signature through technology. So the person can't run away. I can't say, even electronic signature, I can say somebody took my signature and attach it to a document. But here, if I put my digital signature, I'm bound to it through technology. It binds me to that signature and the document. So that is done through technology, so which is much more secure. And also especially in terms of contracts. I mean, you can't just, attach somebody's and put it there and say, somebody can say, so you can even go and challenge in a court of law. In that sense, it'll be very difficult to prove on electronic signature whether somebody has altered or not. But if you put digital signature, it's clearly visible in electronic form that somebody has actually changed the document or, the signature and all that after, certain documents have been completed. the receiver can do that. So in that sense, digital signatures provide much more features and also much more secure.
Dinuka, in introducing digital signatures, you had to also build the ecosystem, right?
Yes,
I cannot just choose to have a digital signature and then suddenly it's done, right? How did you manage to do this?
It was a challenge in terms of letting people know how digitally you sign the document and what kind of infrastructure you need. So we had to create that awareness first. So we took certain options. We are from a legal perspective to convince people that the digital signatures are as good or if not even better than a physical signature or an electronic signature. We had to create awareness. So we got legal experts to come in and we had webinars to explain government sector as well as private sector that digital signatures have the same legal acceptance like the wet signature or the electronic signature. Electronic Transaction Act of Sri Lanka specifically speaks about how the legal acceptance is there.
Sure.
So we had to create that awareness. And then in terms of technology, it is not a very difficult task. You are given a digital signature in a hard token and then you just plug in, you just have to digitally sign it. But still that awareness amongst the users of digital signatures, we had to create. One good thing was during the middle of the COVID lockdown, the government, the then secretary to the president issued a circular to all the government organizations saying that they need to start adopting digital signatures, because for the government also they saw the value of using digital signatures, especially during the lockdown when people were working from different areas, because you don't have anyone need not physically come to sign a document. You can sign the document from your home or wherever you are, even when you're out of the country. So it was a challenge, but I believe now people are more and more getting used to the signing, and we have created that awareness even amongst the banks. To if you send a banking instruction using a digital signature, the acceptance is there now.
Yeah, one of the challenges that we faced, especially prior to COVID, was before actually issuing a digital signature to an individual, we had to validate the authenticity of that individual, because we guarantee that this signature belongs to and it's a valid signature. In that sense, we have to go through an internationally acclaimed process of validating the authenticity of a person. So there was a documentary process that happened, right? Problem was previously it was manual, and and then suddenly COVID came. We had to automate. So now it's actually it's not easy to electronically authentify a person, because there are lots of fraudsters out there. But we figured out a way to do a sort of a more of a mix, digital plus manual system, where we can easily issue a digital signature to an individual. Because why we need to do that is because we guarantee the authenticity of that person, that this signature belongs to somebody. For that, we as an organization had to do a validation of the authenticity through a process to make sure that this signature actually belongs to somebody who's actually claiming to be that person.
Sure. Yeah, please.
I spoke about using a digital signature in a physical token.
Sure.
We took a step further because a lot of requests were there, especially for the corporates. When the directors, they don't carry the digital signatures, they wanted to sign it with their mobile phone or the iPad, the mobile device. So then we went ahead and introduced the soft token, where now you have the option to sign digitally using your mobile phone or even your iPad or a mobile device. So that's also now available.
Channa, now increasingly we are seeing these QR codes at merchants. It wasn't a factor, 3 years ago, I think, right? But more common now and more common in very unusual places, right? Tell us about LankaQR. Again, this is an ecosystem, right? Everybody can issue QR codes. I mean, it's so easy to create one, right? Tell us about how LankaQR has managed to unify this QR payment system.
Yeah, so I think we need to. It's interesting why LankaQR was introduced initially.
Sure.
Right? Because when we came with the LankaQR, already there was about 2 decades of card usage.
Sure.
And then when you have a card, debit or credit card, the merchant needs to have a point of sale terminal for the card to be used. But these terminals cost a hell of a lot, right? Like used to be 50,000, now with the exchange rate fluctuation, it's now more than 100,000. So a small time merchant, because if you take the SME sector, they bring 52% of our GDP, right? So that's the largest sector. And most of these SMEs couldn't afford to pay 100,000 and get a terminal. So they didn't have a terminal. So even if the customer had a card, they couldn't use it. So the logic was to introduce something free or near zero cost to them so that they can accept the electronic payment. So which was the best way was to introduce a QR, so just a sticker on a stand which doesn't cost anything to them, right? But it also addressed a problem of cycle breakdown. Now what actually happened was, we want to say order a three-wheeler or taxi, and we want to do it through an app, right? And then the money will go to do the bank account of the guy who's driving the three-wheeler or whatever, right? But the problem is, whenever they had to go and buy vegetables at the end of the day, they couldn't make a payment using any digital device, because the lady at the fair or lady at the shop, right, couldn't accept anything other than cash. So they didn't have cash because the money has gone to the account, and they didn't have to go to ATM and withdraw cash. Now, because of that, they used to push back saying, please give cash. I don't want card payments or anything digitally. So only way is to bring them that, if you want to call them the micro merchants, into the ecosystem so that cycle breakdown doesn't happen. So now a three-wheeler guy can go and scan a QR because the money is in his bank account and make a payment to that lady. The money will again go to that person's bank account. So I think that created the entire ecosystem to bring this micro merchants into the payment ecosystem, which they were outside, because through cash, right? It was just a cash transaction outside the banking system. So the effort was that. But then what we realized was, this was actually ideal to attract tourists. Because if you take tourism, Indians and Chinese actually basically dominate our market in terms of tourists, right? And then majority of them are very familiar with making QR payments. So now actually it's a huge attraction for them. When they come to Sri Lanka, they can use whatever app they have and then scan a LankaQR and make a payment. So they don't need to use a card, or they don't need to use cash or do exchange conversion at the airport. They can just simply use the app, just to similar to what they are doing in their countries. They can actually just scan.
So you also sort of had conversations that made exchange control rules flexible enough for this to happen.
Well, I mean, it works through the banking system, right? But it's just that they can use the app the way they are using back home, and make a payment, and the fund transfer will happen through the banking system, right? It's a legit financial transaction which is coming through the formal banking channels, but for the consumer, doesn't matter. It's just scanning and making a payment.
Another unique feature of LankaQR is it's interoperable. By interoperable, what we mean is, now earlier there were QR codes issued by certain, let's say, a certain organization and a telecom company or a bank, but only that particular app, the mobile app can scan it. But when central bank came up with this specification to make it interoperable, so irrespective of the mobile app that you use, you are able to scan the QR and make a payment. And by doing so, what we did was this international integrations. Like now we have integrated, like Channa said, with India, with China. So for them also, whenever they are the Indians or Chinese tourists come in, they are now easily able to scan the LankaQR and make the payment. We don't have to go and replace the LankaQRs to facilitate these Indian organizations who want to cooperate with us to make these payments for their citizens also. So I believe the unique feature and the success of LankaQR in time to come will depend on that it being interoperable, and minimal changes needs to happen from the issuers of the LankaQR.
Are you seeing evidence that visitors from China and India are now beginning to use this?
Absolutely. Actually, we recently, about a couple of months ago, I think in February, we launched QR payments to UPI users in India. We are seeing actually increasing number of transactions happening without doing a lot of publicity. I mean, this was just a launch. But there are couple of apps which are doing a majority. They are planning to have launch. So because the good thing is, for them, it's a day-to-day life. What they have been doing there. And also hassle of, doing a currency exchange, changing money, and then the loss that they incur in that conversion, conversion, because they have to convert it into dollars and dollars to rupees, right? So all that goes away. So we are actually seeing a lot of traction. We are planning to bring actually 2 more players from China, Alipay and WeChat, into the ecosystem fairly soon. And once we do that, we will see a larger usage of this ecosystem because we have nearly 400,000 merchants out there with QRs.
Okay. Something that again works for merchants is the national card scheme. How does this work for what sort of efficiencies does this bring to the payment system from a merchant's point of view, Channa?
I think it's more than the efficiency because it's similar to a standard international card scheme, what we have issued, which is following the international standards.
Sure.
But the main benefit to them is the commission that they get charged per transaction, right? So that is capped at 1%. Which used to be somewhere between 2 to 3 to 3.5%. We have even seen some cases 8% commission being charged on these transactions. So especially if you take the SME sector, they don't want to partake with such a high commission. So the main advantage for merchant side is the lower commission that is being charged. So 1% is not really a deal breaker in terms of a transaction. But in terms of the banks and other organizations that are in this ecosystem, it's the huge cost saving. Because what actually happens is all domestic or local transactions, there's no foreign exchange outflow, which is one of the advantages of introducing this card scheme because it's completely controlled locally and between local financial institutions. So in that sense, it's only between those two organizations the transaction happens. There's no money going out to any third party.
These cards are branded with the JCB brand.
It's actually it's a national card scheme. So we have originally partnered with JCB for the international acceptance of this card.
Okay.
So what JCB is in the national card scheme is once if somebody goes outside Sri Lanka, then they use the JCB network to make a payment. But if it's within Sri Lanka, it's completely within our ecosystem. There is no JCB involvement in local transactions. But we are now in the process of introducing actually 1 or 2 additional players into the ecosystem, also international card schemes, so that there will be choice for consumers with which card to go. So we are just in the process of rolling out a few more players coming into this ecosystem in the national card scheme.
As CEO, Channa, you have a responsibility for the vision of the organization. You have to be thinking not just 6 months forward. You have to be thinking, okay, how is this backbone that I'm building relevant in 5 years? What is the ecosystem going to look like in 5 years? And how do I build something that's relevant for that time, right? When you look at the long-term challenges that are top of mind for you, how would you put them into groups? How do you bucket them? What are they? How do you describe them?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is we are a national organization now becoming more international organization, right? So when you are doing a transaction, especially a financial transaction, the availability and reliability and security are the top 3 things in mind. So we need to put ourselves into the shoes of the consumer who's making a transaction at that point, right? So for example, if you have not taken your physical wallet, and you're using your phone to make a transaction, and if it doesn't work, you don't have a choice. So we don't have an option of failure in this, right? The system cannot fail whether it's during daytime or midnight or early morning, right? So the system, the reliability has to be there 100%. Because otherwise the consumer is in trouble.
Right.
So we design our system in a sense that hopefully never to fail. So we have primary sites, we have DR sites, we have backups happening, synchronizing data. So the network is built in such a way, if one fails, the other will take over. Sort of pretty much automatically. So in that sense, we have to build that. So because we are not like a single organization, let's say even a bank or a finance company. If the system goes down, it's only those customers of that bank. But here it's interoperable, it's international. So the system has been designed in such a way, the reliability is at our top of mind is reliability, and then also security. So that is where international certifications have to happen, and also we have to take certain precautions to make sure that the transactions are secure, and also going through different types of certifications, right? And also different types of penetration testing to vulnerability assessments to so many other things to make sure that all our systems are secure. Right, and that's a considerable effort to happen. But still, if you are an international organization, that's a necessary evil to have because at the end of the day, people will do transaction if you trust. Well, this is financial transaction, right? And if you don't trust the network, then nobody will use it. So
if it fails on you once when you try to use for a personal transaction, then you will not
switch.
trust it for any other transaction.
You will switch. You will switch back to either cash or you will not use it again, right? So it has to work the first time, every time. So that's our challenge. Yeah. How do you make sure that it's 100% available, right? And nothing goes down. So in technology, all of us know things go down. So how do we make it resilient? Even if something goes down, something will come up and provide that service. So that's a challenge, but I think it's an interesting challenge to have.
So in terms of the challenges ahead, looking ahead of the payments landscape, how things are changing, what we do is payment landscape is ever changing, but we need to look at what kind of products and services that we as a national organization can offer to our citizens. So we while we keep an eye on how things are changing and 5 years down the line, what could be the technology that is coming in, we still look from a more local perspective to see what kind of things would be more relevant to our corporates, our citizens. And I think the biggest challenge we foresee is now we are moving more to an international operation. We are having these cooperations between our counterparts in other countries. International card schemes are more and more interested in working with us. So we look at how as an organization we can also evolve to take up these challenges, because when we work with these organizations, the legal jurisdictions that we work with could be different. In terms of the technology, it could be different. We need to integrate with them in a faster way. So we have come up with certain technology like middleware, where we get these organization systems to integrate with us with the minimal effort and the time. So these are the technology would be one of the key challenges when we look ahead. But like I said, we look at what is more relevant to us when we pick up what we need to take from here to the next 5 years.
So one of the areas is, especially when we are getting into international agreements, we have seen the corporates, they need to sign contracts cross-border, right? So when we are issuing digital signatures, domestically that will still work, but we need to have international acceptance for the, especially for international contracts. So now we have actually gone through a process called Web Trust certification. And with that, these signatures is accepted outside Sri Lanka. So organizations can get engaged in signing cross-country, cross-border contracts as well. So these are evolving requirements that are coming from the market, both from the consumer and the corporate perspective. So we have to keep on innovating, and we have to keep on being ahead of the curve and think through to see what is coming. And also I think the premise of us is we will identify what are the gaps in the market. That is our role. No point bringing in something that's already there. We need to figure out what are the gaps and fill that gaps through technology. That has been our mantra for success.
Some wise words to take away from that. And I think your success is because you are constantly able to put yourself in the user's shoes to understand what is painful, what is that pain point, and then address that gap.
Absolutely. So because what we have been telling our internal people also, put yourself in their shoes. So you go to a certain place, say you go to a hospital, right? And you have to make that hospital bill payment. At that time, if you can't pay, you are desperate, right? So put yourself in that shoes and say, hey, it cannot fail. Because if it fails, it's not only us, it's that person who's at the receiving end who is actually failing, and they are in dire straits. So once we put ourselves, we need to make sure, one is it's convenient and thing has to happen, and also reliable. It has to happen every time, each time and every time.
Channa de Silva, Dinuka Perera, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you for joining us here, Ramesh.
Thank you very much for having us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.